Hey, everybody out there in Viewerland. Hello, hello. It's October. Welcome to the October Parentis Literary Salon. The blank page is our subject for today. I am Devo, founder of Parentis, and this is Christina Chiu. She's on the other side. What? It's crazy. Yes, read the thing. It says, if you are here, please let us know. Do let us know in the comments. Put your name. Say where you're from. If you're a regular, like Andrew. Hey, Drew. Good day from Sydney, Australia. Drew comes every month. We love him. And we love all of you, but we don't know that you're out there unless you put your name into the chat. So please do that. I will very, very quick, while we're gathering, thank our beautiful sponsors. Yay! We love, as usual, the DeGroat Foundation. They are so amazing. Yay! And also, as always, the New York Council of the Art. New York State Council of the Art on the Arts is a major sponsor of ours, and we love them.
Thank you.
The season sponsor for the fall 2024 season is the Writers Room NYC. I'm kind of loving these titles. I can just read it. I don't have to memorize it, but I do know that the Writers Room is an absolutely exquisite place to go and get your writing done. So I'm glad they sponsored us so that I can tell you all that. And I think they even have day passes. If you just come into New York City, you can get a day pass and spend the day with other super cool writers. Also, don't forget that we are still taking donations for the Sandell Morse Author Ambassador Fund. That allows us to have representation on our board by our constituency. So it allows a writer parent to sit on our board perpetually, forever. So we would love it if you would generously donate to that fund. You can do it through our website. We are a nonprofit. And our mission is what? Our mission is to help writers stay creative after they have kids. And to do that, we present some amazing authors every month. Let's hear about the ones we have this week. Christina.
Hello out there, everyone. First, I've been doing this for about 10 years. Parentis has been around much longer than that. But, I just want to thank everyone who donated to the Sandell Morse, Ambassador Fellowship, just because, first of all, it was a challenge to meet that match, which was $25,000, and we killed it. It makes us feel pretty darn amazing because we know that you guys are out there, that this is family, that you guys really care about us and you want to see these salons and all the other programs, and it means a lot to us. So thank you for donating to all your causes and this one. It makes this possible. So onto the blank page. That's our theme this month. And we have 4 incredible authors who have a lot to say about this. So let's get started. We have 4 authors. Devi S. Laskar is the author of The Atlas of Reds and Blues and Circa. It's a novel. Everyone, hello. Our next author will be Zibby Owens. She's a podcaster and author of Blank. It also is a novel. Bookend.
She's very famous.
A memoir of life literature, a children's book, and her most recent book, which she edited, which she'll show you now. Thank you, on being Jewish. Now,
Evie, you can hold up your book too if you want to. We don't mind. Everybody's allowed to hold up their book.
I'll just stay like this for an hour. This will be my marketing for the day.
There it is. There are books everywhere. These are my books. Dude, I have books too.
We have Oliver de la Paz. He's the poet laureate of Worcester, Massachusetts.
Poet laureate.
Hello.
Look at the poet
everyone.
Laureate.
He's the author and editor of 7 books. You'll hear more about that. So our first reader tonight is Tanuja Desai Hidier. She's the author of young adult novel Born Confused. I love that title. And its sequel, Bombay Blues. She's the recipient of the 1995 James Jones Literary Prize and Best Books for Young Adults. Now living in Maine, this is her first appearance at Parentis. Everyone, please welcome Tanuja Desai Hidier.
Tanuja!
Hi!
Tanuja! Yeah!
Hello, thank you so much for having me in the salon. I'm very honored, and I'm a fan of all the authors here, so bonus. I'll be reading a Recipe for Love, Accompaniments for Grief, an excerpt. My mother was born in a Villa Parla kitchen, 1938, when Mumbai was born in India, coming to a roiling boil under British rule. Aided by a midwife, attested to only by affidavit, my grandmother-to-be earthed into this spice-redolent space, this longed-for baby girl. My future grandmother, a wonderful home chef, my baby mother was raised on hot chapatis smeared with ghee, Polan puris, budana khichdi, Indian cuisine like life, including the salty and the sweet. Like my mother's lifelong favorite comfort food, and mine too, varan bath, which my mother's mother made for her, gentle on the spice. Later, when my Maharashtrian mother and apartheid South Africa born father fell in love in medical school, add dash of scandal, salt, not to that time's taste. Still, they combined ingredients, not a drop of love went to waste. My pioneering parents, first in our families to have an intercaste love marriage, to immigrate to the US, to welcome into their lives mixed race grandchildren. From hello, kaisako, kemcho, making room in the recipe, the masala mix. My mother taught herself to cook after arriving a new mother bride stateside. She often concocted 2 dinners a day for my father, khichdi kadi, rotli shak, at a time when the ingredients and humans of their homeland were so hard. For me, first American born in our family, Campbell's soup can recipes. Her style evolving into an Indian American dream cuisine, recipes rainbowing a color to satisfy every palate, stirring our stories together, whisking up delicious, euphoric, diasporic from disparate. She showed us how to bring our whole selves to the table, the way to relishing our ravenous, hyphenated identity hearts through our stomachs. It took guts. Yet still, when needed, my bowl of home of choice, varan bath, sweet dal and rice, served with love from my mother to me, with love received, a 2-for-1 treat. With a few tweaks, my mother would turn our sweet favorite into next day savory Gujarati fodder for my father. As one oceans and away here on Wabanaki land in Maine, she showed me how to do as well, teaching me recipes from March 2020 when we realized the dream of reuniting 3 generations under one roof, until August 2022, a month shy of 84, now no longer able to get to the kitchen, still bed so regally, notepad page after page my mother gifts to me. These homespun recipes that spring, summer increase in frequency, love these, scripting how to feed my family. And I know now how to comfort myself when that dreaded time comes to be. Varan bath, the first she shows me. It's the first I make, at long last able to offer her a glowing bowl of childhood. Time I do, she rises breathless all the way up to bed edge, tells me with joyful teary eyes it's so delicious, so satisfying, not a drop left. Varan bath 2 ways today, my grief a blank white page. I bring her notebook to the kitchen with me. I know it by heart, but I soak in the sheet. Home is not a safe space with love you make, and a legacy, a recipe, sustenance, a once upon a tale across time we trace, a state of saying, aching grace. This page, a talisman, a treasure, my feast of a mother still nourishing us and meats, a bottomless treat, story to relay and repeat. This all you can eat. As the mustard seed dances hot oil open, I inhale the alchemy. And here she is, right beside me, forever part of the recipe. And now, I know a marrow truth. Those random occasions when she'd gift me this bowl of gold out of the blue. Perhaps when deep in her belly, she was missing her own mother too, as I now do. A Madeleine, if it were Proust, a perfect split lentil, a portal home to. Thank you.
Yes, that was amazing. Oh,
Tanuja,
I love a feast
Beautiful.
of a mother. I want to be a feast of a mother.
Beautiful. Yes,
I'm
and
sure
I
you
love.
are.
I don't know, man. I'm like more like a morsel of a mother.
Morsels add up.
An ort.
I love that line, diasporic from disparate.
Yeah,
That was
nice.
really beautiful. I love how you use food in your work and how it kind of becomes a character. Can you talk a little bit about that? What does food allow you to do? Not just in this piece, maybe, but in other work.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, in this, it's a way to kind of cover up what is missing, and all of those senses with those smells and the spices that, you know, of my mother, the smell of my mother cooking, the sound of her cooking. It really feels sort of like spell casting. Just, I don't do it nearly as well as she does, but like, you know, doing the tadka, curry leaves and mustard seeds and things like that into hot oil. I think it's a way uh, to make manifest what is not sort of visible anymore to the usual eye. In my books, food as well, I feel like it's always been kind of a portal into my motherland, because I was raised in the US. I lived in Bombay as a baby, and I'm the first American born in the family. And when I was growing up, it was, you know, not accessible. This was like pre-email, cell phones. My family didn't have telephones in India either. So we wrote on those triple fold pale blue airmail stationery pieces.
Oh, I remember
and
that.
them up, and
You
then
would fold
That's
those
great.
edges.
It was like so thin.
yeah, and
The
it would take so
whisk paper.
long for, you know, by the time the letter would arrive over there, the news was old over here. Like I remember like mentioning a cold kind of casually to my grandfather, and he was in a panic in India, but the cold was over. And I would just run to the mailbox, and I remember like opening the mailbox, and that as well felt like a way of bringing something distant near, like seeing the blue of that stationery, of like that other sky that I didn't know so well. So I think maybe all of my writing on some level is that it's kind of a way to try to access a place that means so much to the people who mean the most to me that I never got to know firsthand in the same way.
Nice.
So-
Out in the audience, Marina mentions they're called aerograms. Does that sound familiar? to you?
Aerograms. Yes.
Yes.
Um,
Story in my
Tanuja, just wondering, so you're in Maine right now. I just want our studio audience to take note of our subtitles, because we have a Maine to California with New York and Massachusetts in the middle. Like we're kind of all over today. It's beautiful. Helen says that her family also wrote on those light blue aerograms. Everybody, we all have connection to those aerograms. But I was just wondering, Tanuja, did your family settle in Maine, or did you move to Maine recently?
We moved to Maine. So I grew up in the States and then lived in London, UK for 17 years. My brother has been in Maine since the late 90s. He's a neurosurgeon. He came because of his practice, and he loves nature, and it's spectacularly beautiful here. I didn't want anything to do with nature for a very long time. I wanted asphalt, concrete, like delis open all night. I was very much a city person after like New York and London. And then he'd been kind of waiting for a family member to move here. And when we sadly lost my French parents, my in-laws, and it was getting more and more difficult for my parents to travel abroad. So it made sense that we would kind of like move here and try to consolidate everybody in one place. And it was to get everybody under one roof in March of 2020, like kind of just in time to quarantine. And it was a difficult time, obviously, and a traumatic time. But we had so many silver linings to, you know, like be able to break bread, chapati, baguette, whatever. My husband's French, around the table together was really a gift. And I was amazed to see how much I actually fell in really quickly. I think it was sort of, it came right when it was needed, and I didn't realize that I was sort of seeking that. And now to be able to see the ocean in 5 minutes, I feel like it would be hard to give that up, even though it was never something I was active before.
Yeah.
Having it.
That's fun. It's
So-
beautiful. Well, nature can be
It's
very
very-
healing, certainly. Certainly the
Yeah.
wild nature of Maine is very special. Very special. And also just, they're having a whole conversation about aerograms off in the chat. Rachel says that the aerograms are what kept her going in a pre-internet college spell in Paris. So it's kind of fun. There's like a whole,
Actually, isn't it sad that we don't even write letters anymore? It just
Yeah.
gets.
I got a card from my mom. My mom writes me cards. It's so lovely. Actually,
Beautiful.
today's my daughter's 18th birthday, and she wrote
Wow.
herself a letter when she was 6 years old. She wrote herself at 18 a letter to be read on her 18th birthday, and she opened it this morning on a FaceTime, and it was crazy. It was so beautiful. She said she told herself that she needed to make the world beautiful. And she asked her older self, are you doing something to make the world beautiful?
Oh,
Or have you changed your mind about what your goals are? Like, it was kind of amazing, right?
Milda, that morsel is delivering clearly.
It's like a little
doing the job.
chocolate. Okay. I'm sorry. We can keep going. I distracted. Shh. Go, Christina.
all right. Our next reader is Devi Laskar. She's the author of The Atlas of Reds and Blues and Circa, which is a novel. Her work has appeared in Tin House and Rattle, among other publications. She's been nominated for the Pushcart. She's a native of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. This is her first appearance at Parentis as well. So everyone, please welcome Devi.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor. So I think I'm going to read to you from my second novel. It's called Circa. It is written in second person, and after I read my excerpt, I'd love to talk to you why I did that. So at this part of the book, one of the happy trio has died, and so we'll just start from there. The second time he says it is after school to his mother, who asks him for a glass of water from the far end of the sectional where she is curled into a ball. The Grimaldi parents scream at each other. They cannot bear to be in Marie's room. They cannot bear to be out of Marie's room. You run upstairs, 2 steps at a time, everything stationary. Rejected clothes strewn on the floor, a glass of water, half drunk, on the dresser, her homework on an unmade bed, her hot pink comforter bunched up like an accordion against the wall. You walk downstairs, slowly. Mr. Grimaldi suggests they should plan to empty Marie's room when the time is right, and Mrs. Grimaldi says that now it is a shrine, that it will forever be a shrine, that it will remain as their daughter had left it. Mr. Grimaldi runs his hands through his hair and then covers his face with them. I'm crashed now, Mom, he says, handing her a plastic glass of water. She sits up, takes the glass, and flings the tepid liquid into his face. Mr. Grimaldi quietly tells her to stop. You want to grab Crash's hand and drag him away. Instead, you run into the kitchen and grab paper towels. You try to mop up the water, but Mrs. Grimaldi snatches the paper towels from you and flings them at Crash. The telephone rings, and Mr. Grimaldi rushes to answer it in the study. He returns to the living room a few minutes later, his face flushed, streaked with tears. Hira, your mother wants you home. The days leading up to the funeral, Crash coughs steadily. First a sputter, then a persistent tickle at the back of the throat, then a barking, whooping cough that you think is a cry for help. You ask Ma if Crash can spend the night in your guest bedroom, take a break from his parents' funeral planning and fights about Marie's room. Baba answers with a resounding no. Baba, who is always so conscious of what he eats and drinks, begins smoking again. After a 10-year gap, he ends up going through half a pack during the course of a single day. You walk to the Grimaldi residence, watching neighbors bring over plates of cold fried chicken and green bean casserole. They bravely eat a bite, put much of it into the fridge. When you return home, you ask Ma to make the Grimaldi family something to eat, something better than greasy fried chicken and green beans cooked in what appears to be condensed mushroom soup. She agrees, but the kitchen remains dark. The stove's coils remain cool to the touch. Your birthday party was canceled. There is a mountain of food to be consumed, and yet your parents shovel everything into cardboard boxes and arrange for donations to the local food bank. You ask why. This is how we mourn in our culture, Ma says. We fast. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yay.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the second person.
Let's talk about it. Yeah. So here's the thing. I started this book way back in the 90s. Okay. I was in graduate
90s.
school. Yeah, the 90s, right? I was in graduate school. I had a really good friend who suddenly got quite sick. And actually, the book is dedicated to her. And so while she was sick, I was writing these little stories. They were mostly in first and third person, and they were mostly to entertain her. And so then she passed away, and then I had to put the book away. I couldn't deal with it anymore. And when I kept coming back to it, I would work on it for a little bit, and it would be okay, but just okay, and it was just like there was something wrong, but I couldn't quite fix it. And then when Atlas came out, I had to figure out something to do to, for my next thing. And I was like, I love that book. And I really want to, it had been 25 years at that point since she had passed. And I was like, I got to do something with that book. And I tried everything and nothing worked. And then my friend and classmate, Julie Otsuka, who wrote the Buddha in the Attic. So that novel is about the Japanese war brides or brides that came in before World War II and their story. And it's first person plural. It's we. And I loved it. And I was like, okay, this is so great. So I tried to do we. And of course I flunked, I couldn't do it. But then as I was going through all the different persons, I stumbled on you. And then I was like, oh, I love you. This is great. And it did all the
We
tricks.
love you too.
Thank you. And it did all the tricks because it's reflexive. It is like but it also invites the reader in, and it collapses the distance between the reader and the writer. And so I really loved it. And so the little thing about you is that once you start doing it, it's really hard to stop. Yeah.
Did you have to fight your editor on that? Like, were you able to publish it without anybody being like, excuse me, we don't do that?
Yeah, you is very frowned upon, generally speaking. And I would say that the first people who wanted this book really wanted me to change it to third. And they gave me the weekend to think about it. And I literally hung up the phone and I thought about it for a minute and a half. And I was like, no, I'm not. And I was like, I can't, because I've already tried the other ones and I know it work, right? And so I was like, no, I'm not going to change it. And then the person who ended up buying the book loved the you more than me. So I was like, all right, well, I'm very happy with my decision.
Nice.
So.
Well, I mean, you is really like, it can collapse the distance, but you have to do it well for that to work, right? Not everyone can get on that like perfectly. So that's amazing.
That's so great. And I love it. I'm kind of intrigued by the fact that both of you kind of chose something about food. That's kind of so far. I'm like, I wonder what's going to be next. Do we have more food? It's very cool.
Just putting pressure on the readers that come after me.
Well, it's super. Well, so it's like super.
I'm not gonna read about food.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's super random because we literally just partnered with a company called One Potato, and they do newsletters that are all about food and stuff. And we get a little section in their newsletter where Parentis writers get to write about food. They can do, whatever, recipes or essays or whatever. So it's just like, what a nice segue. Thank you very much.
It was so great when Tanuja was speaking about hearing the crackle and sizzle of the spices in the oil, because that is my experience too. I grew up in the United States, and I'm the first one to be born here, and it is really interesting. Like, I think food is the Indian mother's love language, right? And so I'm sure all mothers love language, but especially the Indian mother's love language, right? Like, unless you're like stuffed to the gills, that they're not happy, And so
there's also a traditionalism in your region, right? So it's like, this is my recipe, my mother's recipe. That your mother's recipe is like from across the street, and it uses a different right. Like,
exactly.
What does Joe say?
My parents are Bengali, and so so they have their own cultural niche. So
there's Joseph Kennedy.
I do not understand Joseph Kennedy's
no
thing,
lumpia.
No lumpia or dinuguan. I have a lumpia poem, but I'm not gonna read it.
What's lumpia? Explain.
Lumpia is an egg roll. It's a Filipino egg roll.
See what I know?
It's usually stuffed with pork.
Sounds good.
And
yummy.
It's really, really good.
Oh my God!
Kind of, you're expected, if you're a Filipino, you're expected to bring him to the party. Dinuguan is a little bit more exotic for folks. It's basically pig's blood.
Oh, that's very exotic.
That is exotic.
Yeah, but no food poems tonight. Sorry.
That's okay. That's not the theme. The theme is the blank page. So you can write. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, we will be talking about the blank page.
Yes.
So let's move on to our third reader, Zibby Owens.
Zibby!
Yay!
I like your name. I like seeing your name.
She's the author of Blank, a novel, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature.
Zibby's really good at holding
children's
up her
book, and she just edited.
We all need to learn from Zibby.
Yep, she just edited this anthology on being Jewish now, and she's a podcaster. You may have heard of her. She podcasts Moms Don't Have Time To, and here she is. She's got like all this stuff done. So
much time.
Here we go. You can do it. She's got 4 kids. She owns a bookshop in LA.
It keeps them hidden behind that pretty couch in the back.
There you go. There you go.
You don't know what's behind that couch. It's like piled of toys.
It was, but then I smushed it back against the wall because there was too much that I would throw back there. So now I can't even open the cabinets.
Nice.
But yeah.
So everyone, please welcome Zibby Owens.
Yay.
Thank you. Oh, and now I should read. Okay. I was like, what are you going to ask me? What's up next? Okay. So even though this is about the blank page, and this would be so topical, this is my novel, which maybe I really should read from. But anyway, the light is not working well. This came out this week, so I feel like I'm in full-on mode of promoting this, but it came out on Tuesday in ebook and audiobook. It's called On Being Jewish Now, and actually it came out last Tuesday. Oh my gosh, it's already been a week. And then the paperback, which I just got from the printer, this is like one of the only copies. It comes out November 1st, but hopefully a little bit sooner. By way of background, I thought of the idea for this project on June 30th, and now it is a book. So I am very, that was my entire summer.
Like lightning.
Not only was I the editor, but I'm the publisher. So there is literally, if you have an issue with this book, it's my fault. So pretty much.
What do they call that in the theater?
And it's called On Being Jewish Now, Reflections from Authors and Advocates. There are 75 essays in here from different authors, all writing about, the prompt was, what does it mean to you to be Jewish now, and how does it feel after last October 7th? So it's basically very hopeful. The message of the themes are very hopeful, but anyway, it's been a year. So I can just read part of my introduction. So it's not, okay. Why we're all here. I never planned, this is the first time I've read this. So actually that's not true. I read the audiobook. But anyway, I never planned to be publicly Jewish, as many now refer to those of us who have used our platforms to advocate for fellow Jews. I mean, I'd never hidden that I was Jewish. It just wasn't the most salient part of my personality, nor was it overly relevant to the mainstream conversations I was having on social media, on my podcast, or in my newsletters about books. Of course, I included books by Jewish authors when I loved them and wanted to shout about them from the rooftops, but not disproportionately to books by other authors. A book was a book was a book. Sometimes I'd post about Judaism when the spirit moved me. A photo of candles I'd remembered to light that Shabbat, a beautiful Passover table, the Hanukkah festivities. I did write an essay about the Pittsburgh massacre, which fell on a night when I was at a friend's daughter's bat mitzvah. I also wrote about my deepening connection to my own temple during the pandemic after the loss of my mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law to COVID and the loss of my own BFF grandmother. Suddenly, our family was the one receiving gifts and calls. Our loved ones' names were being read and honored on Yahrzeit, the anniversary of their deaths. I made the main character in my debut novel Jewish. This is the novel. Because of course I did. Write what you know. It wasn't even a conscious decision to make Pippa Jewish. She just was. I included a lockdown scene at a temple and gave the Hebrew school teacher a big role because Pippa's son was preparing for his bar mitzvah. I even named the teacher's dog Dayenu because funny. Although I hadn't been a regular poster about Judaism specifically, I realized that as my non-existent social media accounts became fulsome and my public identity went from complete nobody to someone who could potentially help others, I didn't feel fear in speaking out about things I believed in. I speak out because I feel things incredibly deeply. Pain, hurt, unfairness, joy, all of it. If a good piece of cake makes someone else happy, it makes me so ecstatic that I moan in delight and ask to talk to the baker and tell everyone about it. Likewise, when someone wrongs me or someone I love, I pounce. Another reason I speak out, I think, although I'm not totally sure, call my old therapist, is that I feel the shortness of life constantly. I was born with a heightened awareness of my own mortality, but losing my best friend and college roommate on 9/11 hammered it home for me. At any moment, I could disappear in a puff of smoke like she did. As the children's line goes, hair today, goon tomorrow. When I go to lunch at a new restaurant, I share my location in case the restaurant blows up in a targeted explosion and I disappear. When I cross the street, I'm wondering who will know to call my kids if I get hit by a car. Anxiety or reality? Who cares? Given this fire in my soon-to-expire belly, I act. If I have a business idea, I start it. If I have a book idea, I write it. If I see a problem in an industry, I try to solve it. Pandemic hits, start an Instagram live show. Boom. So when October 7th happened, I cried, I mourned, and then I moved. I posted, I wrote about it, I acted. Before October 7th, I hadn't experienced much anti-Semitism, just a sprinkle of sea salt on a big buffet. Suddenly, I became one of the many targets. I lost followers and had people attack me about my decision to withdraw from the National Book Awards when I raised valid concerns about anti-Semitism. My name was added to blacklists of Jewish authors. An anti-Semitic troll tried to tank the Goodreads ranking for my novel before it even came out, but I garnered enough support from readers to get the spiteful comment, Zionist racist, taken down. Many guests who were scheduled to be on my podcast canceled. So many people, so many friends just didn't understand the facts. If they did, I reasoned, there's no way they could be saying and thinking these things if they only understood. I was scared to speak out. I'm still scared. I was scared that asserting my Jewishness publicly would get me in trouble, and it did. But I knew I had to speak up. What would happen if I didn't? What if no one spoke up? I had a platform that I had to use. If I could, I must. At every stop on my recent book tour, at least one woman would approach me, timid, quiet. She would wait until the signing line had ended and come over to me nervously and then whisper, I just wanted to thank you for speaking out, for all you're doing, for the Jewish people. I'd hear about her cousins or friends or colleagues who had been in Israel on October 7th or who had been lost. I'd hear about the anti-Semitic attacks in her neighborhood, how she hadn't been sleeping, how all she could do was worry about her kids. Shell-shocked, the woman would reiterate how much it meant to have another voice out there, my voice, how it kept her from feeling less alone. Thank you, she would say again. Keep speaking out. We need you. As I slipped my Sharpies back into my tote bag, collected my belongings, and thanked the bookstore owner or event host, all I could do was think about her. I still am. And so, this project. Should I stop?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Why don't you stop there? Because I have a million questions, and we'll get.
I want to just take a second. I'm interrupt Christina to just say that I love the carpe diem attitude, and that it's from birth. Like you've always had this, where you're like, I'm gonna die, but let me do some things before I do that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Were you very, am I allowed to ask you this? Were you very ill or something in the beginning? Like, why were you so mortal when you were a child?
Neurotic. And I just my grandmother is like, we just all have the worry gene. I'm like, okay. And then I didn't realize anxiety was a disorder until I was like in college. Like,
well, it doesn't sound like you, I mean, okay. Like I know you for 14 seconds, but it doesn't sound like it's like crippling anxiety where you're not doing anything. It's the opposite. It's like, I'm going to die, so I better do all the stuff. I have limited time to get everything accomplished.
It's very proactive.
Yeah, it's like using your
who you get that from? Is it just inborn, or is it a parent, or what?
I will say the anxiety has not always been so productive. When I was younger, I had a lot of social anxiety. And I even went this whole summer where I could not speak, and I just had to like listen to all the conversations around me and wonder how is this so easy for everybody else? Like, how are they just saying, how do they know what to say? How is that person saying something back? And I would just like listen and wish I could jump in, and I just couldn't. It's like everybody was in the pool and I didn't know how to swim.
Did you write during that time where you were not speaking? Were you like internal?
Yeah. And like if I called home or I talked to an old friend, I could talk. It's just around people, new people. I just had this like,
I would never have guessed that about you. Like, like if I had to, like, if you had like a multiple choice, like that would have been
two truth and a dare. Now you know what to put on your two truths and a dare.
Yeah. I'm making up for lost time right now.
Look what Daphne said. She said, thank you. She's working on not being that woman hanging back.
Oh, Daphne.
She's also a lovely writer.
Look, it's hard. I mean, it's really, really hard. It took me a really long time, like decades. And
I used to stutter. So like hearing you say this is really, I used to like being in front of people and talking to them or talking to anyone, reading in front of the room, I would get paralyzed. But how did you overcome that?
Well, I developed a drinking problem. No.
I think we need to have a disclaimer. We do not recommend that.
I'm sorry. Oliver is horrified. Oliver is totally horrified by me. I'm so sorry. No, but I mean, I'm kidding aside, but that is one way I sort of self-medicated, not in a destructive way, but it was the only way I could talk is if I had like a drink or two, and I was young and I was like, oh, and I think now I would have just gone on medication, right? But there weren't the same options back then. And so I sort of found ways to self-medicate. I got through it by getting older and by finding circles where I felt comfortable more often than not, and then like expanding through that, and
now you're part of the Parentis family. Yay!
Yeah. And writing. I mean, I really found my voice through writing, and that's always because as soon as I would write, like all the thoughts, which were like jam-packed, would be like, and it would all come out and it all made sense. So I've turned to writing forever and ever and ever. And it's still sometimes how I figure out how I'm even feeling like now, which seems crazy, but I'm always worried, like I'm a concert pianist or something, like something's going to happen to my hands and I'm not going to be able to process my feelings anymore. So
thank you, Zibby. All right, so we got to move along because we got to get to the blank page because I know a lot of people want to talk about that. So our final reader tonight is Oliver de la Paz. He's the poet laureate, as I said, of Worcester, Massachusetts. He's the author and editor of 7 books: Names Above Houses, Furious Lullaby, Requiem for the Orchard, Post-Subject, A Fable, and The Boy in the Labyrinth, which was a finalist for the Massachusetts Book Award in Poetry. His newest work, Diaspora Sonnets, published by Liveright Press in 2023, is long listed for the National Book Award. Hello!
Yes.
It's incredible! And it's the winner of the 2023 New England Book Award. Everyone, please, please welcome Oliver de la Paz.
Hey, everybody.
Applause,
Thank you
applause.
all. So I'm going to read two poems, and poems, thankfully, are short. So my sons are on the autism spectrum, as am I, and I have been writing about them for a number of years. And this is a poem about them. It's entitled "Undressing Sons: A Colloquy." And each section has a little asterisk, so I'm going to snap my fingers so you know when I'm on to the next section. Undressing Sons: A Colloquy. Beneath my fingers, the buttons and the small worship of their clasps. Capacious. The world between breaths is capacious. Think of the potentials of a bare stage. Think of the riggings in the darkness. The curtains slide back, zippers and hems, the mouths of shoes empty of them. They are animal and full of ache and shape, or they are shorn of shape and have filled the interstices of my thought, or they are neither mine nor theirs, nor the idea of theirs, the rind of their clothing in heaps on the floor. Lungs in and out, change the capacity of their shirts so that I am clothing a kind of buoyancy. Ritual by which the sun will not touch them. Ritual by which they will not feel cold. Ritual by which the wicked shall be repelled. Ritual by which we shall know them in a crowd. In another country, they would own one outfit. They would take turns wearing it. They will be each other in stages. We will preserve our memories of who we are in seeing them dressed. I woke to find the eldest nude facing the dresser. He stands and sways. There are no breezes in the house, but he makes his own breezy movements. Because he is 10 and cannot tie his shoes, he insists I double knot every shoe to eliminate potentials. Hinged from their shoulders of flamboyance, color on their skin like a skin, collars askew in their plaid Sunday shirts, tidied up feet, steady little birds. And we will step into our potentials, and we will witness gilded cars breeze past with their wanting to shear us from our fabrics. And we will clutch our collars holding our skins together so that we may know our skin, so that we may keep them held and whole. And my next poem is entitled Brass. On seeing the Boston Pops with my son at Hanover Theater. In the mezzanine, he tilts his head, angling his right ear so that each eighth note shimmers like polished apples. Each eighth swears its solemn pledge, rebounding off the curves of the proscenium, a light from the polished trumpets. The notes land in surges on his collarbone, and he brings his arms up, crosses them over his heart, his hands lightly touching the divot just below his throat where the music comes up from his chest, and I can hear him humming, just barely, a trickle, patterned, smooth as river stones, curving its parabolic path across my son's enraptured face, the way I know the arc of the sun will cross the firmament again. Notes rising from the mouth of brass and a scent like the slow rays of heat that, for the first time in months after winter, finally warmed my skin in the late evening. And I close my eyes as if in prayer, because how can I stand to watch him? The way the song he hums throttles me into feeling impossible love. How can I stand it? This glory, this beauty, this singing. Thank you all.
Oh, sorry, we're supposed to snap for poets.
Terrific. So
Yeah, you're supposed to snap.
Oh, there's not enough snapping. It's not loud enough for you. That was amazing.
Wow, that was gorgeous.
Oh, the words.
you.
You can just eat the words. They're so beautiful.
Yeah, and the love and the beauty just comes right through. And and even that first poem, like, it was mesmerizing the way you snapped. I just, the rhythm and the, oh God.
Do you often have to come up with physical representations of your poems? Are they mostly visual? Like, do they have visual aspects that you in readings have to interpret through physicality or?
Yeah, so what I often do is I often write in couplets. I compose in couplets just so that I can sort of see where the images are lining up and where my sentences are lining up. In terms of that poem on Dressing Sons, a colloquy, that was actually started as an essay initially, and then I just said I can't write essays because I'm a poet. Prose is hard for me, and so what ended up happening is that I just sort of wrote these little notes, and they ended up being sort of little commentaries on various stages of seeing my kids dress up, and I could never create a prolonged narrative, if you will. So what ended up happening is I just ended up braiding scenes together. And so visually what it looks like is just basically like a line and then a crot in between each of the lines. And that also helps me with my pacing and sort of understanding where I am in the space of the poem.
Nice. You have lots of fans in the chat. I hope you're reading the chat because it's like a line of like,
cool.
Lovely, you're amazing, blah blah blah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have your sons read that?
No, but like they know what, they know Dad's a poet and they know that, it's kind of cool, but also not cool. If you know what I mean. It's like, I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. The 12-year-old is quite impressed and oftentimes sort of flashes my dad's the poet laureate badge.
Nice.
When it serves him. But
I love that kids
very
learn long words from their father. Like their father is like occupation, like laureate. Like my dad was an inorganic chemist. So inorganic.
Yeah, I don't think
was
he has
like
any
the
idea.
word that I had,
Yeah, I don't think he has any idea what that means. I still don't even know what that means.
It means you get crowned with laurels, right? Don't you walk around with your little laurel crown?
I got a medal, and I figure I should probably just walk around town with the medal.
I think you should. In coffee shops, stand in the corners and do presentations. That's
a great idea.
Or you could fuse it to your car.
I could put it, like the Mercedes, right, where you have the little symbol on the front of the car. I put it on the front of my Honda CRV. Like that's the poet laureate.
All right, we should get serious about the blank page.
Yeah, let's talk about the blank page.
Sure.
I'm one of these people who, oh my God, I could rip out my hair sometimes because Zibby, you're saying like how words allow you to express or whatever, but half the time, all that junk in there, I'm like, how do I get it out on the page? It just drives me nuts. And so the blank page is so important to me. I know out there there are people here who feel the same. I know it. It just can't be only me. So let's talk about this. All right. How many of you have ever suffered a writer's block or come to the, I mean, like Hemingway, right? Like,
Hi. Thank you for coming to the world.
I don't. I'm loquacious. It's
yeah.
terrible. I have no
Milda.
time.
No, Milda, you be quiet. No, you're off.
I'm the one that's like,
okay,
edit down.
Debbie, let's start with you. Let's talk
Sure.
about a moment that you've experienced. What happened? How'd you deal with it?
You know,
Well-
it's I just had well, I will really briefly compress this story, but basically I wrote I've been writing since I was 9. I had a really great language arts teacher in the 5th grade who introduced me to poetry, and I'm like, people do this for a living. And then, you know, and then fast forward, I became a journalist, so I worked for daily newspapers. And then when my kiddos came along, I could not do the beat that I was assigned. I was predominantly a cops and courts reporter, and so I just couldn't do it because crime does not happen between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Crime happens between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. and I had 3 kids, and there was just no way I was going to do that job anymore. And so I went back to my first love. I did poetry, and then I started writing my stories again. And then fast forward like many, many years, I was 6 weeks away from finishing my first novel when my husband was racially profiled by his former employer in Georgia, and they raided my house at gunpoint, and they took all my things, including my computer. So I was without my words, and I have faced the blank page for a number of years, and it took from 2010 for like a full year for me to like even figure out what to do. And then my friend, she was like, you're a photographer, take a photo every day and caption it, and those will be your words. And then if you do this as a regular practice, your words will come back to you. And they did. And so by the time I sat down to write Atlas, my first book, it was 2014. It took me 2 years of me addressing the blank page because I didn't have my stuff anymore. I just had little bits and pieces. And I will just say that practice of taking a photo every day and captioning it, I still do it. I started on June 23rd, 2011, and I do it to this day.
That's cool.
And
is that an Instagram? Do you keep it on social or do that for yourself?
On
Nice.
Instagram,
So you take a photo. You take one, or you find.
I take a photo. I started off doing art, but then I just had to switch to photography because we had to move. And then, but I take a photo, and it's a new photo every day, and I make a caption, and that's the word. That's like, and that's how I reclaim, I think, my time. I think writers really beat themselves up, right? Because we're like, oh, I didn't do enough today, or I should be doing this and I'm not. And honestly, I think the best way to overcome all of that is to give yourself a little credit. Like, hey, did I think about my book today? Yes. Okay. Did I write down one sentence? Yes, I did. And then, did I actually like have like all this free time and write down like 2 paragraphs on a piece of paper? Yes, I did. Okay, I'm done for the day, and I can give myself a nice big, badge, a little sticker, and then I am going to move on. And then tomorrow I'll try again. And then enough of those days thrown together, and you're going to have something. True.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's nice.
Debbie, when I had writer's block, I love Hello Kitty. I know it sounds crazy, but
yeah, I love Hello Kitty.
Love Hello Kitty. So I went through this dry spell, and finally one of the things I did was every day I bought these stickers with her little smiley face, and every day that I actually got to the computer and wrote like a sentence, anything, I would put to the calendar, like I would put the little face, stick it right on that day. And after a while it would string together, and it would feel like, oh, I see, I did something. I got there.
That was like Don't Break the Chain. Who was that? Jerry comedian Jerry Seinfeld. said, don't break the chain. Like he did a joke a day. And then once it got long, he's like, oh, I can't break the chain. Like I can't, like I have to do it every day.
Yeah, it's so smart.
Not
But
everybody can, depending on their kids, but
yeah. And I know a lot of people, I know a lot of really amazing writers who out in public say, hey, I don't write every day. And I'd like to call a little BS on that because they're the kids in high school who are like, who get the 100 and then tell everyone they didn't study. I'm like, Parker, I know you studied. There's no shame in saying you wrote every day, right? Like
that's true. But there's also no shame in like some people's like lives, home lives are so crazy that they cannot sit every day. And to celebrate even just I did it once in the week is a big deal. Like
it is.
And being able to take that one day and add it to the next week where you did that one day. And then the next one. And then like after a month, you're like, what, 30 days? That's
yeah.
like, you know,
and then
whatever,
just like the sticker, right? Just like the sticker. If you can write down like, or even like somehow, even on your phone, like put a little thing in your notes function and say, okay, I thought about this today, and here's one sentence, like even in your notes function on your phone, then that counts towards your writing practice. I really believe that. And I think we just, as writers, should really give ourselves a little credit for all the work we are doing that we don't necessarily have much to show for it, but we're thinking, right?
Yeah. Did you have something to say on this topic?
Oh, I mean, yeah, the blank page has been the leitmotif, if I'm pronouncing of my whole life. I mean, I think that's great to celebrate like every movement forward. And sometimes you can't rest, like you said, Devi, you don't have a page to show for it, but you have a thought. Or I feel like even being able to reclaim like a little time dream, even if it's not directly related to what you're writing, I feel like that's gotten harder since the deadly scroll of the cell phone. And I know that the moments that I've been able to kind of, in more recent years, make more progress. Every year I do 1,000 words of summary. Jamie Attenberg has that sort of write along online. Yeah. And that period of time always feels like it keeps me anchored in, even if there are months after that I don't get momentum. But during those couple of weeks, I try to sort of make that the first thing to do, sort of like the artist way, those morning pages.
Yeah,
and
the artist way.
That
2 pages a day.
Yeah, that kind of thing helps a lot. And then I find other art forms help a lot, like what you were saying. If we have another thing in common, as well as the hot oil and spices, Devi, because with my second book, with my first novel, Born Confused, I wrote it before having kids. And it was very intense, but it took like 9 months. And then my second novel was after having 2 kids, and it took 3.5 years. Sure. It's a little bit longer than the first, but and the first one was set in New York City, where I had lived for 10 years. So that process, even though the plot is fictitious, I drew on my years living there. And the second novel, it's actually because of becoming a mother. I was going to write all kinds of different projects, and then I really wanted to know my own motherland more. And I think it has to do with becoming a parent, and then just feeling like I wanted to like have that, like find my way in and have some, information.
Did you get a travel grant, or how did you work that into your arts practice somehow to fund that trip? Did you travel? Or did you
I did travel, but I actually did quite a bit of it we were living in London at the time, which proved to be a great to explore
like
South
the
Asia
community and like
but I did go to Bombay 3 times. Some of that was on like the advance that I had, but that was used up pretty quickly, to be honest. And I had an outline. I sold the book. I sold both on an outline. The first time around, the book is relatively outline. The one that's set in New York, Bombay Blues, I got to Bombay, and like on day 2, the whole outline went out the window. Like nothing was, that was like total fiction, because I didn't really know Bombay. And I took a lot of photos, and I took them. My protagonist in both books is a photographer, aspiring photographer. And I was also taking photos just as notes to like try to remember things. because that was also like, those were intensive trips to Bombay. And when I got back to London, I sat down, looked at the outline, and I was like, yeah, no. And I had no idea. It was just like sitting with a blank page for, huge stretches, thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Like, why did I think I can write about this place that I don't know anything about this? Like, it's overwhelming. I thought I could go there. I had 2 kids. I'm like, I'm going to go there in like 1 week and get everything done. I had organized like meeting a gazillion, all these things. I was trying to kind of pack it in, because the incredibly detailed, like, care, and my husband being able to take time off work, all the things to allow me to go on a trip. It was such a, kind of plan that I felt like it took me 3 trips in the end. I thought it would take me 1.
Right.
But what I started to do is sit down and like go through my photos of Bombay. And I started by looking of Chor Bazaar, which is a kind of flea market in Bombay. And I started simply by listing what was in the photos. And with both books, I made albums of original songs to accompany the books. And I ended up writing like this list, and the list ended up becoming lyrics for a song called Chor Bazaar, ultimately. But it was literally like sleigh bells, bar bells, phonographs, and clocks stuck back in time, but not a single photograph of when our paths first intertwined, that kind of thing. And then I used that list, which was mostly a list, but then kind of going into like emotional spaces. And then I literally took that and I prosified it. So I turned it into paragraphs. And then I ended up, that started me off. That's actually how I wrote my first chapter of the book, which is partway into the book. And then through the entire process, I moved back and forth between the songwriting and the prose writing. And the songs often like allowed me a scene when I was stuck. A scene would often allow me into a lyric or even a melody when I would get stuck on the music. And that was kind of a great way to not have to like be faced with the horror of the blank page again, because I kind of kept shifting to
You moved
and then the process
than the actual monster.
Yeah. And then the process was so intertwined. The book and album were both done within like 3 hours of each other on a very, very night, like April. But they were, both things got completed at the same time.
That's cool.
That's not to say that there is no like
thing.
Yeah.
That played off of each other.
Do you actually have you ever had writer's block? Because you have. Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's talk.
Yeah. I mean, my entire book is about writer's block. Like, this was the plot of this whole book, was like Pippa couldn't come up with an idea for a book and decided to hand it in blank as a commentary on the publishing industry and how it's really all about marketing that matters. And like, does it even matter what you put into a book anymore? Isn't it just about the machinery behind it? This was a moment of frustration for me that I vented through a book. But yeah, I find I can't even get myself into the document. Like, that is the hardest part for me, is like wrestling myself away from like literally anything else on the planet to get into a document. And, sometimes for like my novel, and I just finished another novel that I'm like in the middle of editing. I mean, I'm a third of the way through and my deadline's in 10 days, but whatever, I guess I'll finish. But like, I just keep having to be like, okay, like, I know I don't want to do this, but like, first of all, I'm getting paid to do this. Like, I have to freaking do this, like, and also, I'm going to be so proud later. Like, I have to fast forward to me in a year. And so that sometimes gets me to sit down today. Like, the year for me person is going to be annoyed that I rushed through all those edits because that 1 week in October, I had too many emails.
Yes,
like, the book
true.
is here forever, and like, I'm gonna have to be proud of it. So
that's so nice. I like the idea of being accountable to your future self.
Yeah,
it's pretty great.
It's a little bit like that letter, Milda.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting. Oliver, do you get writer's block, or are you?
So I've made peace with my writer's block. I go through what I call my fallow and then my feral phases.
Nice. I like it.
And since I'm in academia, and basically like my calendar is 9 months are occupied by teaching and also shuttling kids to schools and all of that stuff. Since chauffeur, I'm also the person who prepares the lunches, and I make all the meals basically. And so, you know, I just sort of made peace with the fact that I'm not going to be writing from September all the way to May, and I'm okay with that. It just doesn't mean that I'm not accumulating material.
Yeah, viewer audience, remember 7 books.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, I mean, well, what ends up happening is I make peace with my calendar, and I say, okay, this is what my calendar looks like, and I just view those 9 months as periods of fermentation, right? Those are periods where I'm reading, I'm accumulating things, and I'm thinking about a project. So that when June, July, August rolls around, I kind of write every day. And usually I have maybe 2 or 3 projects happening at the same time.
Nice.
So that if I'm bored with one, I go to the next one, and then I go to the next one. And also, just because of my neurospicy brain, I kind of write in series or sequences, which makes it kind of easy for me to sort of riff off of one topic to the next topic to the next topic, because in my mind, they're all sort of enmeshed. So I think that part of what I have to say is that this is something that has happened over years, and over many children.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I have 3 kids, and they're all teenagers now. And this was just a way for me to sort of cope when the kids were still in diapers and still sort of needing me and being very dependent on myself and my wife.
Were you a poet before the children were born?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. I was a poet.
Can you
certainly.
describe that moment just for the people out there who are maybe listening during playback?
Sure.
and trying
So
to
yeah.
cope with that moment?
So I had 2 books prior to my kids, and then my 3rd book came out in 2007, and so I was diagnosed with cancer in 2007, but also my wife was pregnant with our first kid.
Wow.
And so that sort of initiated in me a need or a desire to just like, okay, you got to get all of this stuff down. You got to write. You got to sort of leave a monument for your kids, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Zibby's Carpe Diem.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. And so I think that like the rituals that I had developed from that point is sort of survival instinct stuck with me. And I was able to write quite a bit, and that was Requiem for the Orchard, which was my 3rd book.
You must have been so tired from the process.
It was awful.
Oh.
Yeah, it was awful. It was I was tired all the time, and cold. Like I would get cold and shivers all the time. It was really, really kind of a strange time.
And did the knowledge that your kid was someday possibly going to read your stuff an impetus to write it out, or were you just trying to leave a legacy for like?
Yeah, no. I mean, this is our firstborn, and yeah, I mean, I felt like I had an obligation to get this book out, just to sort of say, hey, this was me. And so like the book it consists of a number of little self-portrait poems as a way to sort of let my kid know this is who I was. But then, you know, I mean, of course I was fine. Eventually it was fine. It was taken care of. I've been in full remission since 2007. Frequent checkups, etc. And I think though what stuck with that, and sort of that fear of the ultimate blank page, if you will, is sort of a series of rituals that I ended up sort of hanging on to continue writing, which is, like I said, that 9-month calendar with the 3 months just exclusively for writing and filling with, you know.
How interesting that you mentioned rituals in your poem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, you know, my oldest kid was diagnosed with autism, and then my middle kid was diagnosed with autism, and then my youngest kid was diagnosed with autism. I looked at my dad, he's clearly autistic. And then I was like, oh, I better diagnose myself. Guess what? And so some of those things that are part of autism, such as like the pattern recognition or the patterning or the rituals or the stimming, man, that's my writing.
And how beautiful it is.
That's my writing ritual. That's just kind of what ended up happening. And
art can process anything, right?
Yeah, and I didn't realize that until, of course, later. But now I'm very, very aware of how it is that.
Do you feel it affects your writing to be aware of it?
Not much. I mean, like I just kind of do it. It's
All
just
right.
like, oh, okay, you're taking care of yourself. Yeah.
Zibby has just noticed that it is overtime. We are over.
Okay.
We're having such a good conversation that we don't even want to stop talking, but we have to stop talking. But we do this every month, you people. So, come back and talk to each other in the chat.
Before we go in November, the theme is the politics of parenthood.
Yes.
And we are featuring Jenny Case, Carrie Luna, and Jessica Rotundi, and Steve O'Connor.
Yeah, and it's going to be awesome. And everybody needs to come back, and watch us every month because we're awesome. And you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel.
And we love you.
And also thank you to these amazing poets and writers and authors. And oh my God, thank you so much for coming. You guys are all awesome. And we'll see you all next month.